Welcome. My name is Rob Candell. This is Raj, my good friend. This is the YFF first guest expert call, one of hundreds, if not thousands, hopefully, as I hope to do this for a long, long time. And for those who don't know, I did have a podcast for about 5 or 6 years that I loved, and I would do interviews pretty much every week. And so definitely, maybe we should change this from an interview or lecture into more dialogue. I like when two people come together and just have a conversation about what works and what doesn't work. I'm going to read Raj's bio in a second so we can be all official, but I want to just share kind of like what Raj means to me. I remember meeting Raj in January of 2017 in my office in Woodland Hills, California. I just started working with a woman named Alexis Neely, now known as Allie Katz. And I was brought in to be the CFO for this small company, I think was doing low seven figures. And Raj was brought in to help organize and clear the way and work on the structure and the game and all the other pieces. And I had worked with many business consultants in my career, but this was like kind of a unique thing where Raj was coming in with his game, which we'll talk about at length during this call. But I learned from him so many little nuanced tricks. He had this master Google spreadsheet that definitely influenced my current forecast, his way of being, his energy, and just someone I'm just so grateful to that you're here for the first call. So welcome.
Thank you, Rob. It's so great to be here, and what a ride we've been on, right?
Indeed. It
It's
really
lots
has
of twists and
been
turns.
quite the ride.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and excited to be your first, so to speak.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Let me read your bio.
Hey,
Founder of Transformance, a mission-driven community supporting businesses in a rapid and fulfilling growth while championing staff well-being, combining a master's degree from Cornell with an emphasis in education. Though with 30 years of personal development, my unique approach integrates both the head and the heart to create harmonious workplaces where individuals continually surpass their perceived potential. I think we'll talk about perceived potential quite a bit today. Since founding Transformance in 2008, I have supported companies in achieving extraordinary results while nurturing an ideal employee environments. Welcome, Raj.
thank you, thank you. Again, great to be here.
Yes, indeed. And
Yeah.
thank you for people on the line listening. So grateful for you to be our witness. You'll hold us to excellence because now, even if this goes totally awry, we still have your witness. So we'll definitely perk us up. So thanks for being live with us. And of course, we'll probably talk for 15, 20, 30 minutes. And then I would love your questions. However, we can be of best support to you would probably be ideal. So if you
Yes.
have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat, or if you'd like to come on and talk about something specific as you set up businesses, we'd love to have you participate. So Raj, Transformance, what is the output of Transformance? What's the mission of your company at the moment, and how do you help small businesses at the moment, achieve all those things we said in the bio, employee environment, nurture, um, passing perceived potential? What are kind of your tools to go from point A to point B?
Yeah, so the origination of Transformance, and it's pretty much in the name, right? A friend of mine came up with it. He's like, well, you do transformation and performance, so Transformance, right? It's pretty straightforward. I was like, that's brilliant. That was way back when. Uh, I kind of started in the product design realm and co-founded Spec Products. You may have seen Spec iPhone and Mac cases around the block. We did about 22 million in annual revenue in our third year. We were number 41, I think 500. And it was through Spec that I actually got introduced to personal development work. I did not know about that. I have been an athlete most of my life and did some sports psychology and things of that nature, but I had no idea the realms of potential that could be unleashed by transforming, what you think is you. And alongside that, we studied with Vern Harnish, who's the founder of Gazelles and Rockefeller Habits and Scaling Up. When I was at Spec, early days, we got to actually be in the room with Vern instead of one of the many consultants that he has now. And we learned how he helped companies that he called Gazelles, companies that were scaling quickly, continue on their scaling path. And so I integrated the two because I really saw the impact of people not being able to perform at their top level as limited by things that they're carrying around with them from their past. And I used to just work my butt off with everything that I would do, and many times I'd be frustrated by the results that I would achieve, and I'm like, why can't I get there? And then I learned about personal development and awareness and all of these other things that back in the day weren't maybe the things that you talked about in business. And my passion has turned into really helping people unleash and remove the things that limit them from what they want and what they love and what they desire in their lives, and how that plays in the workplace.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. So how specifically you go to a company, I don't know if you have one formula at the moment, but you go to a company and let's call it 100, let's actually do smaller. Let's do like a 30 individual company that's having internal communication issues, is having self-limiting beliefs showing up, having leadership issues. Do you have a standard way of greasing that to have more flow in a company? What are your top 2 or 3 methods to improve performance?
Yeah, well, right now I have sort of 3, 4 primary offerings that handle different levels of the company, also depending on kind of the bandwidth, appetite that business leaders and financial wherewithal to do this kind of work. I have a leadership program that I designed called Lifestyle Leader that's really focused on supporting leadership teams, the C-suite or managerial team, and how to be great and still have a great life. I have a 30-day personal well-being game that I do with groups of people that's awesome at helping people source their well-being, take on new habits in the context of a group, which gets people really connected, and in touch with each other. It's awesome for both virtual and companies that do have an office, but really, really great at developing virtual culture. In that, I integrate, helping people craft what is it in the realm of well-being that they want to take on, and help them craft a 30-day well-being game. And then, we do weekly meetings where we help accountability, but we also train on different elements of understanding yourself so that you can start getting some awareness of awareness, as my father-in-law likes to say, and learn about ourselves. How do we become who we are now, and moving past mind-based limitations and blocks. And then I also have my 90-day operational game, where we help companies get clear on where they're headed over the course of the year, chunk that down into 90-day game blocks that we call, and then we have like the number one thing that's the number one thing, a game theme, which aligns what's the most important thing for the quarter, and really help institute operational rhythm, pulse, meeting structure. How do you balance what we call the urgent, important, and non-urgent important work in the company? Companies are so mired, especially fast growth, smaller companies, in doing the day-to-day, that they just don't carve out the bandwidth to do the things that are going to help them scale, become more efficient, and get to that next level, and stop just treading water and being frustrated by what doesn't work. And so, I come in at different levels. Sometimes companies will come in and do the well-being game because it's a low cost point, easy thing to have large impact on individuals. And then they'll be like, oh, we love this. We want to do something like, let's have that energy go towards our operations because we loved what you did with the well-being. So, I have a few other programs as well, but that kind of gives a top level.
Yeah. I'm thinking when I was listening to your answers, just the challenge of what it means to run a business. And we have two business owners. Here comes a third. Three business owners on the call at the moment, all in different phases of the business. And so maybe we could really focus on leadership and, you know, some of the things you've dealt with, and I could talk about some of the things I've seen in terms of leadership, of how to expand and grow one's ability to lead. So imagine you're working with a group with a young leader, someone, let's think a smaller company, maybe a solopreneur. I'm not sure if you work with them or have a few people on the team. And what attributes do you often see in leadership that has more potential or that can grow? Or what are the areas, if you were talking to a young entrepreneur, what would you recommend in terms of how do you maintain that personal development edge while expanding the business? What are some of the practices you've seen to really enable someone to become a great leader and owner of a business?
Great question. Love it. One of the things that's so important, and with the type of audience that you attract, Rob, I imagine that people are mostly aware of this. Interesting to use the word aware around what I'm going to say. And often we don't make time for it. And that is developing our ability to watch ourselves. And in that watching of ourselves, take on growth and development of what we can see is getting in our way. It's one thing to be able to observe yourself and see like, oh, I keep doing that thing. And sometimes that takes outside support, coaching, which, I or many others provide. And then there's doing the work to transform it. So having a regular meditation practice, whether that's, watching your breath or doing some guided meditation or hybrid, where you're really deepening your ability to open the window to awareness. The mind is designed to always be in the future or the past. And, meditation allows you to develop a part of your system that is not your mind. The mind isn't designed to be quiet. It actually doesn't have awareness. You quiet the mind so that you expand your ability to watch. And so, I also talk about this line of transformation. On one kind of, if you draw a line at the origin point, 0, you're not aware of the things that are getting in your way of being successful. As you kind of progress down the line, you're like, oh, I'm doing this thing, right? That's limiting me. You could stop there, and then that you'll be aware of doing the thing, but you'll probably still keep doing it. And then there's transforming the thing, where then you're like, oh, that was so 2020. I don't do that anymore. Or, what? I don't even remember doing that. That's like so not me anymore. And so these different, pieces of that path are critical if we are actually going to evolve into the next level of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a day-to-day, moment-to-moment practice. I use this tool of up leveling, or even better, ifing, EBIing regularly. It's like kind of like a sports team does analysis on their past performance. They watch tape, which is kind of awareness, watching yourself, right? And they're like, that didn't work, that didn't work. Oh, that worked. What can I do with one small step on the things that aren't working to get it moving in the right direction? And then there's being committed to taking that action, so and that is super important, because often the action that we identify to take, or a coach helps us identify to take, we can be stopped in taking it, because that's kind of at the core of sort of our identity staying intact.
Yeah.
What I call our default self, versus our consciously created self, based in survival strategy and kind of egoic, like, oh, I can't do that, otherwise, I'm gonna die. So all those steps are super important, especially for a solopreneur and a small business that has staff.
We were talking, I was thinking about how metrics play into that, and how metrics for a lot of businesses is an evil word, or a math, or, I didn't even do well in high school math. How am I going to collect metrics, or how am I going to keep track of things? And how important that is to that, what you were just saying in terms of the awareness. And
Yes.
so, for example, I was just working with a lawyer, and the lawyer says, like, okay, I'm not sure why my money is not succeeding, or why I'm not hitting my goals in terms of money. And then we talked about metrics. And in terms of metrics, we don't want to overcomplicate this. It could be as simple, though I don't recommend it, but it's simple as a piece of paper where you list every single person you try to sell in a month, every time, the outcome, yes, no, or maybe, and then your notes in terms of what's happening for your success or not success based on those metrics. And so back to your view of the line, at 5, let's say at 50%, when you're aware, a lot of that can be aided by the concept of, wow, what am I doing or not doing in terms of metrics? So then I can make the change by myself or with a coach to go from potential 1 to potential 2, or potential 1 to potential infinity, whatever that number is, but just really getting better and better. And I like that visual you had about the line going from 0 into basically your goal.
Yeah, that's great. And it's so important, right, to have these measures and also to keep them simple.
Yes.
And you know, one of the things that is foundational to what I support people in, and also foundational to business success, is knowing where you want to go, right? Having that be something that the market wants, ideally something easy to sell, and then having a progression of metrics, like where do I want to be in a year? How do I move in that direction for the next 90 days? And then what do I need to do to achieve that? So really like chunking it down from where do I want to go, which can be vision informed, which is another thing super important I've found in terms of, any business idea takes effort, blood, sweat, tears, pushing through stuff. So it's really important that you love doing what you're doing. In fact, I've redesigned my business to do that. And then getting clear on how you're going to fulfill on that vision, kind of step by step in a agile way. I've worked to integrate agile Scrum principles into like a 90-day OKR format.
Could you
So
describe that? A lot of people don't know what that means. Agile Scrum format. I think it's
yeah,
so important. It's such an important thing to describe.
yeah. So, you know, agile, um, Scrum is an implementation of agile, and agile people often say, it's funny. I've talked to some operational people, and they're like, "Oh, that's just for software development," and I'm like, "No, actually." And I was fortunate
I
enough,
agree. Totally agree.
Michael Mancuso, props. He came on as the ops person for Ali's company as I was doing my latest stint there, and he taught me some great things. Also, a book I'll let you guys know about. Um, so, one way of operational planning is waterfall, kind of like we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, right? Which all assumes that things are going to go according to plan, and also that probably, yeah, that's it, agile, um, that more than you know. um, the counter to that is agile and minimal viable product, where you take a step in the direction that you want to go. And yep, Scrum, that's how I spell it. Oh, that's you, Rob. Thanks.
Of course.
And you learn. So build, measure, learn. Maybe you've heard of that
Hmm.
trio. So, we talked about vision, being excited about what you're doing, some clarity about where you want to get, where you want to get to. How do you measure if you're getting there? Then doing the work, balancing running the business and scaling the business to get there, and doing that in smaller incremental steps instead of like, here's my year plan, because the year plan is never going to go according to plan. Has anyone experienced that? And I've done that so many times and still like, and then I was like, okay, enough of that. And with agile, you take small steps, you look at how that worked, you adjust the plan accordingly, and then you plan your next set of steps. And you can do this in different sequences. One thing that I'm doing right now is break the 90 days into 2 6-week sprint cycles, where it's really 5 weeks of work in agile technology, you do a review of the projects that you took on, which is cool. It's kind of like a show and tell. It's also an accountability structure. If you have someone to show, that could just be your coach or your team or whoever you're working with.
Or the YFF
It's like
community, always
the
welcome
way.
to bring it to the office hours every week. Plug, plug,
So,
plug. Keep going.
and then there's a retrospective, like what worked, what didn't work, uh, and because when you're starting out here, even when I'm working with a company, I have an assumption of what's going to work from what I've learned. But every company, every person is different. They a little more of this, a little less of that, and same, with you if you're running your own stuff. So like, hey, what can be better next time? We talked about even better ifing. So it's a little bit of awareness injection. How did that go? What do we want to do better next time? And the next 6-week sprint planning cycle, where you look at what you learned on working on certain projects and understanding your audience better, and then doing slight tweaks and adjustments to your next set of 5 works of sprint work. So I used to just do 90-day games, but it's too long. People keep pushing stuff because they're like, I got 3 months to do it. They never end up doing it, and plus it's too long. You like do too much work and you don't really learn fast enough to be nimble and adjust and like that. So key takeaways there are: waterfall planning often results in a lot of wasted time. Having some cyclic nature where shorter term, like working on things, doing your metrics, what are my projects, take a pause, look at what worked, what didn't work, adjust accordingly, get to work again, like that. Is
I
that?
love it.
Yeah.
I think we ended up here because I think it's important, one, for the people on the call, but two, for the people listening, because agile is really a different way of thinking, because we are by our minds perfectionists. Like, we want the product that we put out there to be perfect. And the problem or issue with that is often that's our perception of what's perfect rather than what the customer thinks is perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there's software companies, this is the book Scrum that I think you're referring to.
Great.
Mike
Yeah.
made the same recommendation to me.
Mhm.
What companies used to do is you used to do like 3-year plans, $100 million, et cetera, and then they would fail. They'd never be on budget and they would never produce. And so Scrum is bringing it down into smaller portions. And this is the crazy part. Software companies often distribute or sell products they know are incomplete and then use the feedback from the people buying it, be the beta testers or actual customers, to send out iterations in the future. So they know it's going to fail. They know there's going to be problems. They know there's going to be bugs. They're using their users, hopefully not to their detriment, to that right balance of users providing feedback. But it's interesting because our mind says we need this to be perfect. And what does perfect do? It keeps us from actually going out in the world and sharing our gifts and sharing our products. And we're in that constant gyration of fixing and tweaking and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. That's great. And I love that you use that word perfect, Rob, because like this is where it really starts to become equally important to do operational excellence and internal transformation excellence.
Great.
Because perfection is kind of an identity-based thing. I use this phrase: "Is it running you, or are you running it?" Am I able to share a slide here,
Oh
Rob?
yeah. 1 second. Let me enable that. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Uh, okay.
You are good at the slides, Raj.
I like to just work with different learning styles, and visuals help. So yeah, I do this whole training series that I do as part of the well-being game and other trainings that I do with companies to help people just understand this thing of like, hey, you have this mind thing. It's sort of on autopilot based on your past. And it's, whether we like to think of it in this way or not. Someone said maybe it's better not to talk about a programmed chip, but rather software, because software can be adjusted and chip might refer to as fixed. So basically, the default mechanism of human being is stimulus response. And our interpretation of things coming in is based on our past programming. And, again, many of you probably know this. And then is that running you moment to moment, day to day, both professionally and personally, leading to reactionary responses? Or are you able to watch again? Watch, like, is that an informed decision? Is that the best approach here? And often when when you run by it, perfection is the driver. As Rob knows, I'm definitely not an 80-20 person for the most part, and I continue to try to try to shift that. And that's something based from my past. Like, I'm not good enough and like not loved unless I'm perfect. And so really gaining awareness of like where your identity is running the show and limiting you from, doing what is the best next step from what is happening. You can choose what's next instead of being, driven by your past.
So good, so important. And I think I would just say this for the record. If you're not 100% sure you want to be a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, please find another profession because it is, I wrote this thing called Messy, which I talked about a couple office hours ago. And in the Messy, I said, I think the hardest or the best lesson is parenthood. I really thought motherhood from my experience, but really like parenthood is number one, one and parenthood. And then number two is running your own business because everything is going to arise in the creation of your business from, like you said, I'm not good enough to should be doing better than this. The ego, the self-flagellation, all the aspects of who we are get stuck in the creation and bringing out our gifts into the universe. It is 100% easier to go work for someone else, for the record. And if you're on this call and if you're saying, well, this is what I'm meant to be, then welcome to the club of the insane solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, which I can tell you after 20, 30 years at this point, 28 years of running my own businesses with myself and partners, there's no greater reward and there's no greater teacher. But your
Yeah.
interpretation, to go back to that slide, your self-demeaning interpretation is going to come up more often than not. And to the beginning of your talk, your awareness of these self-limiting beliefs and how you tweak them and play with them, that's how your business can grow. Because as I like to quote Tony Robbins, the success of the business is based on the psychology of the owner.
Mm-hmm.
When you believe in what you're doing, and that's where businesses tend to grow, when you're like, I'm a piece of shit, then your businesses tend to contract.
And it comes up pretty much every day.
Yeah.
Like this morning was not a great morning for me. I'm on the East Coast visiting my family. We just spent 3 months in Kauai and 6 hour time difference. And I just could not get my ass out of bed at 7 a.m. 10 a.m. rolled along. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be at my parents in an hour because we're visiting family. We live in California generally. And I just like, use the tools, use the tools, use the tools. Like I can't afford to have these 3 hours squandered in self-flagellation, while I'm still doing time adjustment. So
Indeed.
yeah.
Indeed.
And flash another quick slide here. I know we want to get to some questions in a minute.
Yeah.
I talk about this structure, a performance limiting box. And what I say is that if you have everything that you want, then don't worry about it, right? But if there's things that you want that you can't seem to have, it probably exists outside the box. And for entrepreneurs, mostly we're driving to something that is outside of the box that we don't have yet. And so you come up against, there's other things that form these boundaries, but you're unconsciously formed and inherited, right? Because if we've engaged in personal development work, we know that the environment that we grow up in has great influence over us and also what we make up about things, right? So we have beliefs that are unconsciously formed, we have values that are unconsciously formed, we have habits that are unconsciously formed, and we have survival strategies or ways of winning that are unconsciously formed. And all those things run us. That's the it running you versus you running it. And so, one of the things that I really work to do is do a combination of like vision, what are the steps to get there, what gets in the way. And that's where the transformative aspect comes. I don't just do transformation for the sake of transformation. It supports performance. And then it's very targeted because you surface like, oh, I'm having a sales issue. What's in the way of me making the ask powerfully? And then we get to that. I work with a series of really, really seasoned transformational coaches in different modalities, self-expression, inner parts work, trauma work, that when I'm working with a leader, we help identify like what's the thing. And that gets us to the middle of that line of transformation. And that's like not where we want to get to. We want to get over here. So then we do the really deep dive inner healing work with this set of coaches that I work with.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask a few more questions. We'll probably go for another 3 or 4 minutes, and then I want to invite anyone to come on the line. Either you can type your question into the chat, or we'd love to see your face and hear your voice. Also, please note that this is for public consumption, so anything you say will be used, not in a court of law, but will be used for public distribution. So just a warning, so you're aware of that. Raj, let's talk about the fear of success. I think this is something that I've seen a lot. I think a lot of us are really well attuned to being mediocre, or we're in that self-demeaning mode. I think your slide just showed that kind of our self-limiting beliefs. And so let's just spend a couple of minutes, and you're talking to someone and you're identifying that they just have a fear of success, a fear of being big, a fear of being known, and all the things that go along with it. What are just some specific things that you would work with an entrepreneur who has a fear of success?
What a great question, right? Because that's what we're trying to do as entrepreneurs. There are different routes to that. And what I like to do is I love to listen and ask questions. I think you're the same, Rob. That's why I just loved our car rides when we drive together from the airport or
Yes,
whatever, right,
yeah.
to go to an offsite. And whether it's like there's like a set of key limiting beliefs that get in the way of us succeeding. One is like, I'm not good enough, which is maybe the foundational one. Because then there's others like fear of making mistakes, or, like my wife sometimes says, like, I have a great community. There's like these things that if I'm successful, people aren't going to like me. If I have all these, so there's also like a fear of your business dominating you. We have a young relationship to accountability and responsibility generally formed in school, and we can let that fear kind of grip us and keep us limited from getting to the next step, because like, oh no, what's that going to take? A lot of this stuff obviously is subconscious, and it's just kind of running, all kind of rising to the surface in a fear response, which then you're definitely not in awareness mode. Fear is mind-based. And if you're going back, if you're able to watch the fear and identify the root of the fear, and then do the transformational work to have that have less of a grip on you. I mean, I imagine, like, maybe raise your hand if you've had an experience of moving past the fear and you're like, oh, that was actually easy. What was the problem? But in the moment, it seems like the Herculean obstacle that you'll never move past, and you can be stuck there for like a year. I remember Allie's company, right? She was like, can't get past 1.5 million,
Yes.
And now I think they're at like 7, whatever, 10,
yes.
Probably. Yeah. So yeah, any further question on that, Rob?
No, that's good. I think it's, I did have a client once a long time ago, and she came from lesser means. Her family was what you would call, the lower class, and she just had the gift, and she found herself continually self-sabotaging out of fear of rejection of family.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had, through a dialogue, we figured this piece out, that she had set herself up with a glass ceiling. And there was no magic to breaking that glass ceiling. It wasn't like any special drug or any special exercise. It was just the awareness of it.
Yeah.
And I think there's ways to look at your fear. And I think what you're espousing from the beginning is really in being awareness and using something like meditation, or I'm a big fan of journaling. I'm a big fan of
Yes.
always having a notebook by my hand, writing down thoughts. I'm into really constant dialogues with my partner, Morgan Rose, the ability to talk about things and her reflection, and or is it a coach or is it a men's group? It's getting out of oneself.
Yes.
It's hiring a professional who can point things out if you have the means. But the point is to get out of oneself
Yeah.
into a place of seeing what that self-limiting belief is, and then saying, okay, I'm going to confront this. I'm not going to demonize this. And I'm going to take the steps to go from point A to point B to learn how to dance without self-limiting belief and then eventually surpassing it.
That's great. That's a
Yeah,
great summary. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Beauty. Yeah.
All right. Anyone else on the line wants to come and ask a specific question for Raj or myself or both of us? And how can we be of service? You can go off topic, of course, if there's something beyond what we're talking about. But where are your self-limiting beliefs? How can we be of service to you right now? Go ahead, Maurice. Got to unmute.
Hi. Um, I would say like I'm most curious about the fear of the business dominating you. I think that's a reality for me. Like I'm like I had a past of like burnout and depression related to burnout, which is not my reality anymore, but I would say like now I have more acquired a pace in my business where I constantly follow like what I feel called to. I would say like I've never heard of the Scrum system, but I feel very like that just sounded very intuitive to me. Like I get a lot of stuff done and I'm in the process with things. Like I just always follow like what's the next right thing? Like I don't really urged about these kind of projects. I'm always more like, okay, what does the project need in order for it to move? But I do have a place in my business right now where I'm like, I don't know how to get to clients. And so I've kind of like, Sasha's really good at it. So I like outsourced it to her. So I'm still doing a lot of coaching, but like I'm not really pulling in too many clients. And then on Facebook, I got shadow banned for like 2 months. So I was like, that turned into a perfect excuse to like not like to actually like just let go of that piece of calling people in for the time being. And I kind of like I snap in and out of that, like calling people in and then letting it go because I actually like feel called into other directions. And I think that is part of that fear of like my business dominating me. I don't want to be dominated by my business because I think the fear is that I would lose flow in it and I get too like hyper focused on it being one direction, which then I often end up knocking my head against the wall that isn't really, yeah.
Great, great. So I'm hearing the question really is back to your beginning is in terms of fear of being dominated by the business, losing choice in terms of how you spend your most valuable resource, time, and attention, and maybe a fear of success because you think you'll be too busy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Raj, you want to take a crack at that one first?
Yeah. There's, a few different pieces there. Um, if you start to look at the origins of that, I mean, was this, we probably don't have time to dive super deep. One of the things that I offer is a free 1 hour session. I'm happy to I'll give Rob my scheduling link for that, and we can dive deeper if you want. But if you just look at the persistence of this, even if it's the energy around it, the like emotional experience of it, the thought patterns, how long has that been with you, and maybe where did that originate, and what you made up that has that keep being the case. So
Yeah,
like that.
it's with me like 8 years, and I used to work in the fashion industry and basically was 24/7 workhorse, one shoot after another, like
Mm,
dominated by someone above me to basically run the show all the time. So that's when the burnout also developed.
Hmm.
So based on that, I would say that's the first
Yeah,
developing.
and then, I often encourage people to go back further. I get that that's the circumstances under which you really experienced that and the burnout of it, and like that left an impact on you. You don't want to experience that again. And
Yeah.
then there's looking like another level deeper.
Earlier, I would say it starts in like childhood, school, where like I'm a very creative person. I would sit in school, they would tell me what to draw, and I would be like, fuck off, I'm not drawing what you want me to draw, I'm drawing what I want to draw. So it's like just generally like school like was a massive disaster because I just don't comply with structures. Like I create my own structures.
Yeah. So this is an example of it running you versus you running it. And I don't mean to dismiss it in any way, shape, or form, because like it's painful, it's hard, it's like crushing, right? That this thing is so there for you. And if you look at the connection of like, fuck you, I'm not doing what you're telling me to do, versus even you crafting what you know you need to do, you're kind of saying fuck you to yourself. Like, I'm
Right.
not doing that. You're like, you don't want to be dominated by your vision, you know?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so there's some work about like, and there's probably something, there is something behind why did you have that reaction to people telling you what to do? That's where the deeper work happens. Is like, what's the origin of that?
Yeah, I
And
think
one
it's
of,
like my the first voice that always comes up is like they're stupid.
they're stupid. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah. One of the coaches that I work with happens to be my wife's father. He's one of my coaches. Uh, yeah, he was actually Osho's attorney. I don't know if any of you have seen the Wild Wild Country documentary, but he's the crying lawyer. He got like actually, he was personified on Saturday Night Live, but he's a master in inner parts work. So there's some younger part of yourself that has this fuck you thing, and then there's an adult version of yourself that's maybe like isn't sure how to deal with that, and so that part of you runs the show. And there's some information with that younger part of yourself that if there was this kind of energetic acceptance of, and how do I leverage what's valuable from that and not have it run me, something really, I think, powerful could emerge for you there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
and then there's also moment to moment practices. Like, again, there's completely transforming the thing, and then there's things in the moment that can help you move past it in the moment. Whether that's like, I hear you, like to yourself, and I know like I need to do this. Like, for example, you're acknowledging the voice versus fighting it. There's like generating a way of being in a moment where you're like, oh, I know that way of being, which is probably, closed off and dismissive and upset, angry. That's not serving me. What way of being can I consciously create that I can live into,
Right.
that's designed from the past?
Yeah, because it does have value. Like that part of me has value, and it also like any gift is also limiting to you. It's both.
Right, right. And that's the it running you versus you running it. If you can be informed by it but not run by it, then it's empowering, not disempowering.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Beautiful.
great. Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Great question. Thank you so much. Is there a second question that we can be of service?
I'd be happy to ask a question for
Glad to
some
have you.
support. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for everything you've shared so far, Raj. And yeah, for me, I don't know if it's as much of okay, it definitely is a limiting belief, but it's not, it's like fear of success. It's like fear of getting it right, of doing it right. Like as a solopreneur, it's like, right, I have like this huge array of things I could be doing. And I know I struggle personally with this idea, and a little bit with the perfectionism that Rob spoke to earlier in the call, but not from the point of like paralysis. Like I still do stuff, but then I always question, like, am I doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing in the order of operations that it's supposed to be done in? And I know ultimately what I'm doing next is like the thing I'm supposed to be doing. And yet there's this like, crap, why did I spend all this time on marketing when I should have been like, focusing on sales? So instead of sales, I should have been focusing on, whatever. So yeah, this like that's not my mindset concern is like, am I doing it right? What am I supposed to be doing? So I'll just put that on the table and see what we can pull out of that.
That's great. Great awareness, Angela. Rob, do you want to take that? You want me to both?
I'll
Whatever.
say something quick and then I'll pass it to you. I think it's analysis paralysis, is a popular term in entrepreneurship. We used to call it building the bridge to nowhere. And you're building a bridge from here to there, and where are you building it? Well, you don't know. The future's not written yet that we know of, and you're creating it. And so, how could you not be doing the right thing? Because that's the thing you're doing. So that's the kind of optimistic, sunny side up kind of flavor of it. And the flip side of that is to look at terms, and again in terms of metrics. And that's why I like having goals. That's why I'm the biggest proponent of goals. And goals are not there meant to beat yourself up with. Goals are meant to inspire and to mark. And so let's just say something as simple as I need to make 5 sales in June. 5 sales is an average of $5,000. I need to make $25,000. My product's 5,000, and I need to make 5 sales. I wouldn't mark in terms of time, sales, marketing, product development, etc. I would mark everything in terms of as a game against those 5 sales. So if it's June 15th and you're at 1 sale, you might want to look at, oh, I need to do more marketing. I need to do another podcast. I need to speak to more friends and family because I want to get to 5 and I'm only at 1. Or let's say you're at June 15th, you're already at your 5. Either your goals are too low and you can do better higher in July, or perhaps now you've hit that goal and you can spend more time in product development or a freebie, or maybe just take the week off because you've kicked your own butt in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the month. So again, having something to measure yourself up against as an arbitrary, self-imposed fun goal is a better way than the analysis paralysis of should I, coulda, woulda. Pass to you, Raj. You're muted, buddy.
Thank you. Great stuff there, Rob. One of the things that I would assume that most entrepreneurs experience is self-doubt and kind of beating yourself up. And like Rob said, goals comes hand in hand with setting goals because setting goals and metrics has us commit to something. And then, whether we reach them or not, we then start judging and evaluating ourselves and our capacity and all that. And, there's a whole art to setting and achieving goals, and what goals should they be, and like how much time and effort should I spend, and where should, what part of my business should I focus on? And so there's a whole internal game as well as the strategic and operational game to setting and fulfilling goals and metrics. And so one thing to just watch out for is, where is that voice in your head, judging, evaluating, limiting yourself? And in that, like going back to what Rob said earlier, that it's kind of like buckle up to the seat of, to the ride of being an entrepreneur. Like it all comes out, and so just one thing is just like watch the stuff. Thankfully, my wife is an optimist. She used to have a company called Pessimist Beware. Now she's a relationship coach, but she's a great sounding board for me, as long as I don't come to her with like anything that she's causing the problem. If I'm just like, hey, can you give me some coaching here? So that's just like, learn to be kind with yourself and be your best coach. If you could just shift the negative voice to positive voice in your head, okay, I learned that, right? What's going to be next? How am I going to be about this? Who do I need to talk to get to the next step? Another thing to look at is a tool that I like that's super powerful is being 100% responsible. And we've all heard some version of that, but I found that the real critical part of that is, how do you know when you're not? And you know when you're not, at least in my definition of when you're stuck or stopped, and you're somehow blaming, shaming, or complaining about it because you're not empowered in that space. And you know, often people can respond negatively to the being 100% responsible conversation because it brings up everything from an identity perspective of like, I'm being 100% responsible, like, right? But if you're stuck and stopped and not doing anything about it, then you're just not. And if you can just use it as a tool rather than a judgment thing about yourself or others, then it's just like, okay, where am I stuck? What's one small next step that I can take to get unstuck? That might even be talking to somebody to figure it out, because you might not be able to see it. So being on this call, you're being 100% responsible, right? And you're asking a question that's 100% responsible. And so it's a fantastic tool. Anything, like I used to like screw around with like a broken iPhone or whatever. I mean, I still do it. And I'm like, well, what's the step to take? And it's funny because some seemingly stupid little step, like go down to the Apple store. I'm like, I don't have time to do that. Right. And we do it all the time and it keeps us stuck. And then we, you know, further cement the negative self-judgment and stuff. So it's a great tool to kind of interrupt the stuck and block pattern. One other quickly, I'll just throw another quick slide up here, is this tool that I learned from one of my teachers called the scalability target. Maybe looks a little bit overwhelming, but there's different parts of your business. That's what the pie slices are. And there's different rings or stages of scalability.
Could you slideshow that puppy so we can see a little better?
That's right. That's what I gotta do. I was trying to scale it, but
Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Great. So the pie slices are the areas of business, whatever yours are. These are, you know, sales, marketing, legal, whatever. The rings are the stage of scalability. And basically the idea is any part of your business is always at some stage of scale. And we don't tend to break things down like this. And, you know, you were talking about spending time in one area of the business versus another. And so, you know, when you're a solopreneur, you need to figure out how to balance where you're spending your time. Often what you're good at is where you'll be most scalable, and what you're not good at, you'll be least scalable. I'm great at creating programs and I'm really good at delivering them. Traditionally, I've not been strong in marketing and sales. So again, just kind of getting awareness. This is an awareness tool about the operational excellence of the different areas of your business. And then, you know, you just, there's a function to this. You put a dot at what each stage of the business is at, and then where you want to get to in the next whatever period of time. And then you can use that to identify where can I get targeted coaching to make the biggest difference with where I'm stuck, instead of just being stuck, you know.
Beautiful. That's
Yeah.
a great tool. Angelo, did I answer your question?
Yeah, that was great. Those were both really good, both from the optimistic point of view, and then also like some good practical steps to take.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you. Sasha, we have time for a quick question.
Okay, I'll make it as quick as possible.
Thank you.
The last resource was very helpful. Thank you for showing us that.
Sure. By the way, I just want to mention I got that tool from Brian Franklin, who I studied with way back, you know, maybe in 2008 or something like that. So I just wanted to attribute
we know
that
Brian.
You know, Brian.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sasha.
So for me, I'm just like, this is more of a personally where I get stuck and less of a business engineering question, although you could say.
Yep.
We sometimes hit the ball back and forth of like, okay, now I'm the CEO and like, I'm going to make the decisions. And I usually have like a lot of fire about that for a few days. And then I don't tend to hold it well, partly because of perfectionism and many other things that have been named on this call. But there's this sort of like, I know how to do like a very short sprint, but a 30-day sprint or a 90-day sprint is like definitely collapses me out of my decision-making capability. And I've worked a lot on the perfectionism in a couple of different arenas. What else would you say is helpful to stay leaned into that like high fire role when you're getting knocked out?
So I think, one of the things is having the systems and structures to support it, and setting goals that are achievable with the amount of time bandwidth you have. And also, it's great to be in your zone of genius with the things that you're owning, because if it's all like I talk about the quality of energy, like the energetics of doing. Much of our doing comes from fear, and that's a really low quality energy source. Stress and fear. That's how I ran my whole life until maybe I turned 50. I'm 57 now, by the way. And I was like, screw this. I'm not running my life like this anymore. What do I need to do? So I'm still on the path, but it's very important to keep the quality of energy high, and have a range, like have all the different tools in the basket. You can use stress and fear. Accountability is awesome. Staying attuned to your why. I do this thing called your personal why video, and just trying to generate where you're coming from, because obviously there's some area that you're getting into where you're getting like confronted or de-energized, demotivated, and then there's this, and I'm like listening to myself talk here. There's ways to move past that instead of pushing through it. So a little bit of a general answer, sorry, to your question, but I don't know, hopefully that provided some value.
Definitely helpful. Thank you so
in the
much.
moment that we had here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think division of labor between you two as life partners, parents, and homeowners and landowners and business partners, like you're wearing a lot of different hats, and that can get very complicated very quick. And I'm sure all the insecurities and fears can play into that. And so you set yourself up with a very fun and challenging game in that. And so really it's I think in terms of the debate, it's really nailing it down for a set period of time and then seeing what works and what doesn't work is really important. And in terms of, I think, what we're saying is you can have a sprint for 10 days. It doesn't have to be 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be 6 weeks. It doesn't have to be 90 days. It's like what fits for you.
Yes, great point, Rob.
The challenge of having shorter sprints is it's really important to do a sprint and then have an analysis of it, to do a debrief around it. So that's why sprints tend to be a little longer for companies, because if you have more than 2 people or 5 people or 10 people, the planning is a pain in the ass and no one likes it. And it's, you're in planning and then you do the sprint and then you're in analysis. But with 2, you're a little more agile, to use that word, to build this up so you can afford to have shorter sprints.
Yeah.
And so just the only warning I have is don't make it too short that you can't achieve something. Like figure out that sweet spot of short enough that you can keep your attention and your energy behind it, but not too short that you can't measure it or have success at the end, or failure, quote unquote failure at the end. I think it's finding that balance is going to be a trick, but certainly start smaller as a way to succeed.
And iterate, because sometimes we stop with a process because we get frustrated that it didn't achieve the result first time around.
Yes.
It takes me a couple of sprint cycles to get a team to even start working on projects sometimes because they can't carve out the space. So we got to figure it out, so yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Amy, last minute or two, or anything we can be of service?
Sure, why not? I guess my question is, as a solopreneur and like working in sexuality or coaching and this whole realm that is a little bit taboo, it's like I'm constantly trial and erroring so many different things, right? It's like I'm like putting stuff out, seeing what comes back, what gets banned, what doesn't, how do I reorganize? And it's like, as a solopreneur, my question is like how to build like more of how do I say it? Like a professional like front, right? Like I want to market myself, I want to become an expert in my field, I want to present, like I keep studying and I have so many degrees And that's my like go-to thing is like, oh, I need to create more credibility. But then it's like taking away from what I'm pouring into like actually like doing the thing in my business, which is just.
So yeah, that's, I want to know any suggestions that you have for that about just like creating a name and, you know, getting out there in the world to create that business front.
I'll just say a quick thing and then turn to you, Rob. One of the things that I've learned over time is like, what's the simplest thing that takes the least amount of time for your client that produces the biggest impact? Like people just like time scarcity is such a thing. And anything that's going to take too much of their time and doesn't produce result, like they're just not going to do. And it's also very taxing on you to deliver complex things. So as much as you can find that sweet spot of like, what's the thing that's going to make the biggest impact for them? What's the simplest thing that I can do to achieve that, and then achieve it, right? And sometimes it takes some tweaking, adjusting, honing over time. And also just get clear on what they want. Like who's your, like we know this, right? Target audience, like what is the thing that they want? And even when you're working with a specific person, just get very clear, like what's the one thing that's most important to you that I can help you with? So that you're like speaking into their worlds, what's going to make a difference for you, and then become it, like they can't do without you. Instead of, why do I need this person? This person is so valuable. I can't not work with this person. What's it going to take for me to do that? You know, and then custom craft so you can keep them in and maybe get to another level of program that you have because you're adding that value. Like get them in the door, add value, simple, easy, low time, and then what else? Like that's the, you know, I found one of the hard parts is to get that entry point.
It's the technical term is called the minimum viable product, the MVP. You can look that up. It's minimum viable product. And this is really good back to the concept of the software in the beginning, when software companies will put something out, even though they know it's not done, not even close to done, they're putting out a viable product. And so again, that perfectionism wants to make it perfect, but then you're stuck in that loop of trying to make it perfect. And to really exactly what Raj is saying, what's the minimum viable product you can produce that you'll have a gratified customer? You'll underprice it probably. You'll probably make a million mistakes and spend a lot of time running around. That's, you know, this whole YFF is really a minimal viable product at this point. And I'm iterating to make it better and better, using you with a free offering and having Raj come on just to figure out what works. But this isn't perfect. This is a nascent version of what I think, but I won't know what that is. And so it's just jumping off that cliff and saying, yes, I'm going to do this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure. All right. 5 minutes over. Though I didn't really say 60 minutes, but we like to keep to time. Thank you so much, Raj, for coming on, being our first guest star on the show. Really appreciate it. Raj has a 60-minute scheduling link that I will put in the forum of YFF, so you can see that. I can't believe you do a free hour, Raj. That's highly generous. And
I love it. I just love getting to know what people need and want. And yeah.
Great. And he's also offering 4 one-hour coaching sessions at 30% discount. So that is an offer. How do people find you? What's the website? What's the easiest way to connect to these amazing offers?
Okay, so you can email me at raj@go. Oops, I can just throw that into the general chat instead of having you do it. So raj@go transformance.com, and website is gotransformance.com.
Okay. So
that 3 hour session isn't on there, nor is this for. So this is something as an example that I came up with. Like if I get on a phone, free call,
yep.
Like, oh, that's awesome. Hey, you want to do 4? You want to do 4 series? We can see 4 call series. We can see what would be helpful. I'll give you most valuable stuff, and then if you want more, awesome. If not, I'm so glad that I got to help you, because that's what I love to do. So. Anyway, you'll see my other programs on there: Lifestyle Leader, Wellbeing Game, Operational Suite, all that stuff.
Okay, so the website is gotransformance.com. We'll put that on the show notes on the YouTube, and the links will only be on the YFF for the details. So any questions, you all know how to find me. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you guys coming for the first call. I really appreciate it. And we'll be doing these guest lectures about once a month. And then every Thursday, we have office hours at 12 p.m. EST. And again, all those links will be in your email box or on the forum for YFF. And thank you again, Raj, for coming on.
What a pleasure. And so thank you for all your great questions and all the sharing. Yeah, thanks, Rob, for doing this.
My pleasure. All right, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.